Do you want to create the ultimate storage space in your loft? Well, today on Fix It with Fowler, I'm going to show you how to create something like this in less than a day. And the good thing about this system is it does not compromise the insulation values of your loft. Before you start work in the loft, the first thing you're going to need is some PPE. Loft insulation can be quite irritant, and older stuff is fiberglass and very itchy. And not only that, if it gets on your lungs, it'll make you cough and all sorts. So you're going to need a decent dust mask, some glasses or goggles, some gloves and something to protect your skin. I like to use one of these paper suits because when you finish, you can then chuck them away. So once you've got all your PPE on, you can then make a start in the loft. You can now remove the top layer of loft insulation, and the easiest way to do that is to roll it back up. So if you start from the centre and work your way to each end, and that will clear the top 200mm of insulation and leave the 100mm that sits in the joists. When walking or moving around the loft, make sure that you tread on the joists themselves. If you've got any doubts, then please use an offcut of wood or some scaffold boards to walk on, and that way it'll prevent you having any accidents. So that is the loft insulation removed, and now you can clearly see the roof joists. So what we're going to do is span them the opposite direction using some handmade joists. And the reason we're going the opposite direction is so that it spreads the load. So when you come to measure up for your joists, make sure that they sit on top of these roof joists. You don't want them really overhanging too far, and you definitely don't want them short, otherwise there'll be no support. So I'm going to measure 3 metre length and then a 1.8 metre length, which gives me a total of 4.8 metres. I'm going to board almost the centre of this triangle. So I'm going to use 5 joists running lengthways down the loft. So for the joists themselves, you can use something like this CLS timber. Comes in 2 different thicknesses. If you've not got much loft insulation, you could possibly get away with putting something like that across the joists and then the boarding on top. However, to meet the current building regulations, you need 300mm of loft insulation. And how that works is you get 100mm in amongst the roof trusses and then 200mm on top. So what we're really trying to do is get a 200mm joist. Now you can buy timber that thick, but it's really expensive and it's heavy. So what I like to do is make something like this. Now this is really good because you can allow it to pass through ducting, cables or pipes, and it's really light and cheap. So to make this, all you need to do is cut yourself some noggins, and then you can screw that in each side, and that will give you something like this. And you've got a few different options to make that. You can cut these noggins by hand, put it on the floor and screw them together. Or if you've got access to something like a miter saw, you can mass produce these noggins, which makes this job really easy. So that's the joists all finished. Now you will notice that I've got some at 3 metres and some at 1.9 metres, and that is to suit the loft. So you can make these joists however you like. Now there is one thing to note, and that I've got the centre run of the joists are going to be thicker, and that is because the boards I'm getting, which are P5 chipboards, they'll be joined in the middle here using the tongue and groove, and this will give just a little bit of extra support. So that is all the joists up into the loft, and now they're in the loft, we can now work out how we're going to place them onto the existing joists. So I'm going to board this slightly biased to this way, and the reason for that is if the customer wants a loft ladder putting in the future, there'll be enough boarding for the pivot mechanism. So with that in mind, we're going to use this timber that runs down this side to place the first joist alongside it. Like I said earlier, you should really wear a dust mask when working in the loft, However, this loft is a new build, so it's brand new, and the insulation is non-irritant. So with that in mind, and the fact that I'm filming, I'm not going to wear mine unless I need to when I'm moving the insulation. So moving on, to install the first joist, I'm going to use this timber as a guide. So I'm going to install this against this timber. Now when you come to install it, make sure you don't trap any cables, put the timber into place, and then you can fix it with some 70mm or 80mm screws on an angle through your new joist into the existing joists. So here you can see this joist does not meet this joist, so therefore there's no support. Now that's going to happen at multiple times around the loft. So what you need to do is put these together and screw them securely together. That way the support of this will support this. Also, when we put the flooring down, the flooring will cover these gaps and spread the load. So the way to do that is to drill some pilot holes through the edges of the timber, slide them together, make sure they're lined up, and then again, using the 70mm screws, once you're happy that they're all lined up and in place, you can then just screw them together. And that way, that creates a nice secure joint. You can now replace the loft insulation, rolling it back into position. Make sure you tuck it down between the joists to ensure you maintain the insulation values of the loft. Have you subscribed to my channel? Well, if not, why not? It does not cost a thing. You're missing out on loads of great content. If I'm not making things like this, I'm fixing shed roofs, I'm mending doors, windows, doing plumbing or electrics. You name it, I've got it on my channel. So head over, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to leave this video a comment and a thumbs up, and that will help it reach loads of other people. So on to the final part, and that is the flooring. You have a few options. You could use a moisture resistant OSB, but I always use P5 moisture resistant chipboard. These boards come in 2.4 metre lengths. However, I have had these boards cut in half. So that way, once you get into the loft, you can then spin these boards around, and then using the tongue and groove, you can then slide them back together. Now in the centre of the loft, I've got a thicker joist, and that will run down the centre of these and support this joint. So that's all the boarding up into the loft ready to be secured. But before we start, I've just reinforced around the loft hatch itself, and that means when you come in to get into the loft hatch, there's plenty of support there to take your weight. Now the other thing to remember is when you come to install these, you don't want these stopping just short. And if you have one side overhang slightly, the other side will be too short. So what I've done is cut one of these in half, and I'm going to start the boarding from the far end. That way, by the time I get to here, it should be roughly halfway. That'll allow me to put the board in, draw around here, lift the board, cut it, and put it back into place. So now you're ready to fix these boards into place. I'm using 5x50mm screws so they're nice and secure. I've got the cut edge of the timber. I'm going to line that up with the ends of the joist that we've put in, and that should keep it square all the way through. So the first thing I'm going to do is line that up, and now I can put some fixings into this board. And then repeat this process on this board and the next board, and then we can slide the next boards into this tongue and groove and repeat that all the way down until we come to the loft hatch. Push the loft insulation out of the way when you come to join the boards. That way it will not get trapped in between the tongue and groove system. You can now fix the boards into position. I like to use 2 fixings per joist. Once you get to the loft hatch, you can then install the board, making sure it is fully in position. With a tight squeeze you can get back through the loft hatch and mark the underside of the board. However, if you've got someone to help you, now is a good time to get them to mark the board for you. You can now remove the board, turn it over and cut the mark out using a jigsaw or a handsaw. So that is this side of the loft hatch complete, and you now just need to repeat the same process on the other side and then continue the boards down the loft until you come to the end of your joists. So that is the loft all boarded and finished, and as you can see it's made a really good storage area. So if you're going to board your loft, then please leave me a comment and let me know how you get on, and give this video a thumbs up, and that will help it reach other people. Now, the most important thing for me at the minute is to get to 100,000 subscribers. So please click that subscribe button and I'll see you on my journey to 100,000 subscribers.